TKM Incorporated in Moss, Tennessee is a construction company that specializes in erosion control, seeding, and soil, hydroseeding, hydromulch, minor excavation, and silt fence. They also provide traffic control and construction signs. Their business is keeping people safe, but their passion, their mission, is they wish that all men could be saved. TKM has adopted the nickname the King's Men because as they serve you, they also serve the King. If they could provide any of their services for you, please contact them at 931-243-3958. That is 931-243-3958. Or you can contact them on the net at tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. That is tkminc2001 at twlakes.net. TKM Incorporated is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. SJ&L General Contractor specializes in asphalt, demolition, concrete finishing, and heavy hauling. This family-owned business is licensed in Alabama and Tennessee. You can contact them for any of your construction needs. 931-433-4660. That is 931-433-4660, or 3Ws and a dot, sjnl.com, www.sjnl.com. SJ&L General Contractor is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I placed my order. I paid my money. The young lady handed me a tray. It contained a double quarter pounder, a medium order of French fries, and a medium Diet Coke. I grabbed my tray. I turned the corner, and sitting in the dining room at the corner of Max Luther Drive and Memorial Parkway was John and Zelma Rowden. Now, the Rowdens were an older couple. They attended the church where I was working as a youth minister. They were old enough to be in the golden 60s or the super senior group. At my young age in the late 80s, I think they were probably rocking around 70, if not scaring 80 real bad. But a delightful little couple. They were both very short people, very tiny, very small people. John was a little bald-headed gentleman, and Zelma was a sprightly little old lady. And I sat down with them in the booth, and I was having a meal and having conversation. Their granddaughter, Stephanie, was in my youth group, and I was a relatively new youth minister in town. And I've been working at the church there. And so we sat and had a good conversation. And then Sister Zelma, this little old lady, excused herself in a very polite Southern lady way, and she had to get up and go to the ladies' room. She got up and walked toward the back of the building. Now, I'm sitting in this dining room, and the bathrooms are behind me. They're at my back. Mr. John is sitting across the booth from me, and he can see the bathrooms. And Miss Zelma has not even gotten really good out of earshot, and he leans over conspiratorially and says, "I want an ice cream cone." I said, "John, I don't think you're supposed to have an ice cream cone. I think the last time you were in the hospital, it had to do with some things with your blood sugar." He says, "I want an ice cream cone. And at my age, it's not really going to impact my longevity." So I couldn't argue with the old gentleman. I got up and went to the counter and ordered one of those small vanilla ice cream cones. And I came back and sat down at the table. And John goes to town with this ice cream. I mean, he's like a little kid at the fair. He is having the best time of his life. He's living his best life. He's licking on this ice cream cone, and he turns it to the left and turns it to the right and turns it sideways. And I mean, he is really working on this ice cream cone. And all of a sudden, he just stops and slides it across the table. And I'm sitting at the table, and my hands are on top of the table. And he slides it right between my hands. And no sooner does this thing come to rest in front of me as Miss Zelma turns the corner and sits down beside us. Now she's back at the booth. She's sitting beside John. She's looking at me. John looks at me and winks at me. Miss Zelma looks at me and says, "Well, your ice cream is melting all over the place. Go ahead and finish it." I'm like, "Well, I'm pretty much through with this." And then I got up and carried the drippy melting thing to the trash can and threw it away. I sat back down at the table, and John gave me another wink. I had just been given something that didn't belong to me. and I'd been given possession of this thing, and I was expected to either finish it or clean it up. Now, in the case of an ice cream cone, it's no big deal. But what if it's bigger than an ice cream cone? What if it's not as harmless as a little old man on a tight leash trying to get away with a sneaky snack? In the case of the small and the harmless, you just help somebody out. You help somebody save face. You help them avoid trouble. You help them avoid being embarrassed, and you just handle it. Essentially, in certain situations, big or small, you are allowed to initiate good and treat someone like you'd like to be treated if you're in a similar situation. I've been in places where people saved me embarrassment. I've been in places where people prevented me from having to be in the spotlight and it'd be awkward. Now, in this particular case, this was what I considered to be harmless fun, and the little old fellow being smart enough to get away with some trouble in spite of his wife having a little bit of a leash on his snacking ability. True enough, John made his ice cream problem my problem, but it was harmless, even if it was a little bit deceptive. But what about in more serious cases? What about where you aren't actually helping someone and you're being forced into this awkwardness? You're being forced into this situation. What if you're being manipulated and someone has put you in the position to finish what they started, or they've put you in a position just to sit there while the mess melts and develops all over you? In those situations, you have to realize that one of the basic principles of life is don't become responsible for things that you don't control. I didn't cause this. I can't cure this. How do I cope with this? Now, I learned this special skill with a friend of mine, Tim Orbison, and we used to play this paper wad game with our secretary. Glenda Hall was one of the ladies that worked at Memorial Parkway. We had several secretaries during my tenure there, Colleen Horst and Christina Corder and Miss Kitty Denny, but Glenda was always there. And she would get spun up about things. She would be worried about who's going to do what or who's going to think this or who says this. And Tim would play this game with her. And I learned the game from Tim, and I've used it in my practice a lot. It goes like this. I'm sitting in my office with a young person, and they're worried about what they say. They're worried about what they think. They're worried about what they're going to do. They're worried about something somebody did or somebody didn't do. They're worried about what somebody is dealing with, and they get involved in all this kid drama. I take a piece of paper out of my yellow notepad that I take my progress notes on. And I pull this piece of paper out and say, look, I'm going to do a magic trick. I'm going to take a plain piece of yellow paper and I'm going to turn it into garbage. And I wad it up very quick, crinkle the paper, and boom, it's garbage. The French word for that is garbage. Now, have you ever played sports? Have you ever played softball or kickball? Oh, yeah, I have. And so I take this piece of paper, which is now garbage, and I say, look at my hand, and I throw the garbage to them. And almost always they catch the garbage. Now, even if they don't catch the garbage, it bounces off them, lands in the floor, and I go, well, you've got garbage, or there's garbage on the floor. What are you going to do about it? Well, most people sitting in your office will take the garbage and they'll get up and start looking for the trash can. Now, my garbage can is strategically hidden in my office. I hide it on purpose, and I hide it for this reason, because when they get up in the office and start roaming around looking for the trash can, I stop them. I say, no, wait, but before you decide to do anything with this garbage, I've got to ask you, who does this garbage belong to? And they look, and, well, it belongs to me. Well, really, where did you get it? Well, you gave it to me. Well, just because I slid it across the table, just because I put it in your lap, just because I gave you this responsibility, you still have to ask, is it really yours? You see, if it came from me, who does it probably belong to? And then their eyes light up. Well, it probably belongs to you. Well, now what are you going to do with garbage that doesn't belong to you? And you can't say, I'm going to throw it away for you. Now, it's probably okay in a small circumstance to help people police up things. But really the more healthy thing is to say, if this is your garbage, I'm going to put it on the floor, and I'm going to show you the trash can, and I'm going to take a piece of my garbage, and I'm going to show you how to handle it. this is what I do with my garbage, and I'll invite you to do the same with yours. But you can't. You can't take my garbage and be responsible for it, because if you'll take the garbage that I give you, and I realize that you're willing to handle it, I've got a notebook full of yellow paper. I've got a desk drawer full of yellow paper notebooks that I can just continue to give you garbage and pile up the garbage, that it's not only unmanageable, but it's overwhelming. But see, what you do is you decide, well, it's not really my garbage. I didn't cause it. I can't cure it. And the best way to cope with it is I'm going to make you have ownership of it, and I'm not going to take ownership of it. And then a lot of times, once you reach this part of the discussion, the person holding the garbage will take the garbage and throw it back. Well, I'm a person who doesn't manage my own garbage, so I don't want it. So I let it bounce off me and hit the floor. And I go, now there's garbage in the floor. And they look at you shocked, because you're not playing the game fair. You didn't accept your garbage. And if you leave my office and you don't pick the garbage up, I'll tell the next person who comes in here, the person that just left, they left that garbage on the floor. Or I'll leave a note for the custodial staff, please excuse the garbage on the floor. My 2:00 client left it there. And I can make all kind of threats and make it look like that it's going to be your fault, and make it look like you're a bad person if you don't do something with my garbage. But in the end, you have to be comfortable with the fact that it's not really your garbage. And so you really don't have to do anything about it. You really can just get up and leave the garbage in the floor, especially in toxic situations. In some situations, I can just merely walk away and leave it, because in the end, it's not mine. And I don't care what you tell somebody else about it. I don't care what you think about me. I don't care what you choose to do with it. But in the end, it's mine. And I don't have to make any kind of an explanation. I don't have to explain it in any way. I don't necessarily have to say that it belongs to someone else. All I have to say is that it's not mine, and therefore, since I don't control it, I'm not responsible for it. And in fact, if you have to say anything at all, you can just simply say, well, I'm sorry that this is uncomfortable. I'm sorry that this is unpleasant. I'm sorry that you don't like it. I'm sorry, whatever. But actually, it's not mine. You see, there are cases when I help people, and there are cases when I don't want them to be embarrassed, and there are cases when I want to treat someone like I'd like to be treated. But all those cases they superimpose the idea, they grant the idea that this person is not being toxic or manipulative or controlling. This person is not trying to dodge accountability or responsibility. But in the cases where the person is being manipulative, and they're trying to make me responsible for something I didn't cause, they're trying to make me responsible for something I can't cure, then the only thing I get to do is decide how I'm going to cope with it. And oftentimes the most healthy thing to do is simply say, it's just not mine. And because it's not mine, I don't have to do anything about it. In these uncomfortable situations, when you've been given something that you didn't create, and it's not yours, and you're supposed to finish it, in the situation where you're sitting there and there's this melting mess all over you, and people are looking at you, and you're feeling embarrassed, you really don't have to have a meltdown about it. You really can simply say, I scream, you scream. I really don't need to scream, because it's not my ice cream. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707. 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3 W's and a dot, worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting, in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to the city of Huntsville in 1986 for me to be a youth and family minister. I have been a minister since 1980. I have served in this community as a police chaplain assigned to a SWAT team since 1992, and I've been in private practice as a licensed professional counselor since 1998. I'm also an adventure educator and an avid outdoorsman. I dabble in rock climbing and I goof around with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our life has been full of many wonderful experiences and some just outright adventures. I used to write about those things in a little church bulletin article. So now instead of asking you to read those things, we're just going to talk about them in our podcast. And as we talk about them, we're going to talk about the facts. The facts lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. One caveat about the facts is, for the most part, we're going to tell you the facts just as they happened. But every now and then, we're going to tell you the way other people have told us they remember it happening, with a little bit of embellishment. It's all good, clean fun and for educational purposes. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy Keeping Up with Jones.